In the farthest reaches of the galaxy, the United Galactic Federation, UGF, was struggling to maintain its dominance over a region threatened by the ever-encroaching Zorath Empire. The Zorath, a violent and expansionist species, had been steadily pushing their boundaries deeper into Federation space, forcing the UGF to deploy its forces across multiple systems. Tensions were high, and peace seemed increasingly unlikely. So when a strange signal suddenly appeared on the Federation's radar, it caught the attention of the top commanders. A cargo ship, large and unmarked, was entering Federation space under a neutral flag. At first, the appearance of such a vessel seemed inconsequential, just another merchant ship passing through, no different from the dozens of others that traverse the galaxy's trade routes every day. However, there was something unusual about this particular ship. For one, it was enormous, stretching over a mile in length, its hull completely devoid of any recognizable insignia or markings. Even the most advanced scanners aboard Federation ships couldn't determine its origin or purpose, only that it had appeared from nowhere. Captain Alara Miles, stationed at the Federation's outer defense perimeter aboard the UGF flagship Argonaut, was assigned the task of monitoring the ship's approach. She was no stranger to routine cargo ships passing through the region, but there was something in the back of her mind telling her this one was different. Her eyes narrowed as she studied the ship's slow, deliberate movement across the void of space. It wasn't just the ship's size that bothered her. No, it was the complete silence coming from the vessel's communication channels. Every cargo ship, by law, was required to announce its presence as it entered Federation space, but this one had remained completely silent. No standard greeting, no request for docking clearance, nothing. Alara leaned forward in her chair, tapping her fingers nervously on the console. The ship's beacon flickered intermittently, flashing erratically as though it were malfunctioning, but it was the precise trajectory that caught her attention. The cargo ship wasn't following a typical trade route. Instead, it was heading directly for one of the Federation's largest space stations, Horizon Prime, a key hub for both military and civilian operations. The path it was taking felt too calculated, as if someone or something was deliberately guiding it in that direction. Her gut told her that this wasn't a simple mistake. It was deliberate. "Captain, we've attempted to make contact with the ship multiple times," said Lieutenant Merrick, one of the communications officers aboard the Argonaut. "There's no response, just static." Alara exhaled sharply, her mind racing. The lack of communication wasn't just strange, it was unnerving. Every ship, whether civilian or military, had some sort of automated response system. It was standard protocol. But this ship? Nothing. She ordered Lieutenant Merrick to try again, sending a coded message to the vessel, hoping for some kind of response. But just like before, the silence remained. ASC, the ship continued its path toward the station. Alara turned to her navigation officer, Lieutenant Silas, with a sense of unease creeping over her. "Prepare the drone fleet," she ordered. "We need to get eyes on that ship." With swift coordination, a series of small reconnaissance drones were launched into space, darting toward the mysterious cargo ship to gather more data. The drones were equipped with the latest surveillance technology, designed to slip by undetected and record every detail. Alara watched anxiously as they approached the ship's hull, waiting for the data to come in. The seconds dragged on, feeling like hours, until one of the drones finally transmitted a live feedback to the bridge. Alara leaned in closer to the screen, squinting as the drone captured a close-up view of the cargo ship. There was nothing extraordinary to see on the outside, just a smooth, weathered exterior that seemed untouched by time. But something was off. The ship didn't seem to have any visible engines, no propulsion system that could explain its movement through space. Before Alara could react, a sharp, unsettling sound broke through the silence. The drones on her screen began to shift positions, and her heart skipped a beat. The cargo ship's engines suddenly roared to life, emitting a deep hum that shook the ship's very core. It wasn't just the engines starting up, it was the way the ship moved. With a sudden, startling turn, the enormous cargo vessel altered its course, sharply veering toward Horizon Prime, and then, without warning, the ship's speed began to increase. It was no longer drifting lazily toward the station. It was charging. "Captain?" Lieutenant Silas shouted, his voice tinged with panic. "It's accelerating." The ship's changing course and heading straight for the station. Alara's mind raced. She immediately ordered the drones to back off, but it was clear that the ship was no longer under their surveillance. The mystery ship was moving with far too much power to be a simple freighter. She quickly initiated communications with Horizon Prime, attempting to warn the station of the incoming threat. But before she could relay any further details, another alarming message came through the Federation's internal comms, were overloaded with distress signals from Horizon Prime. The ship wasn't just heading toward the station, it was on a collision course. The sense of dread on the bridge was palpable as Alara's fingers flew across the control panel, barking out orders. "Raise the shields. Activate all defense systems. We need to intercept that ship now." The crew scrambled into action, the calm and methodical movements of professional soldiers now clouded with growing uncertainty. They had no idea what kind of shit they were dealing with. The Federation's defense systems were vast, but nothing in their arsenal was designed to stop a ship that seemed so unpredictable. The ship's movements were swift, precise, and calculated, like it had been designed for one purpose, only to strike when it was least expected. As the ship drew closer to Horizon Prime, Alara had a terrible realization. This wasn't just an accident. It wasn't a cargo ship at all. Something much darker was unfolding before her eyes, and the Federation was ill-prepared for what was coming. She clenched her fists, her heart pounding in her chest. Whatever this shit was, it was about to change everything. And for the first time in a long time, Captain Alara Miles felt a deep, unsettling fear she couldn't shake. Alara's suspicions, which had been growing steadily in the pit of her stomach, now transformed into full-blown alarm. As the massive cargo ship continued its relentless approach toward Horizon Prime, the station's automated defense systems blinked to life, but they were struggling to keep up with the unpredictable trajectory of the ship. The massive vessel was no longer behaving like a simple freighter. Its movements were calculated, precise, and purposeful. It was accelerating rapidly, closing the distance at an alarming rate. Just when Alara thought things couldn't get worse, the ship did something she never expected. Without warning, it unleashed a barrage of energy blasts. These weren't the standard cargo blasters that could merely disable shields or cause minor damage. These were weapons of destruction. The first shot hit Horizon Prime's outer shields with a sickening crack, sending shockwaves across the station. The station's defensive barriers held for a moment, but they were clearly no match for the raw power of the ship's weapons. A second, then a third volley struck, and the shield shattered like glass, leaving the station exposed. The crew aboard Horizon Prime scrambled to respond, but it was too late. The station's massive docking bays erupted in flames, debris flying out into the void as the cargo ship continued its merciless assault. Alara could hear the desperate cries for help coming over the comms, but as the station's communication systems failed, the line went silent. The Federation's greatest station was under siege, and no one could reach it. The Federation's elite fleet, stationed light years away on a diplomatic mission, was far out of reach, and there was no way to warn them in time. The UGF was powerless, and Alara's heart sank as she realized the full scale of the disaster unfolding. She was alone, and Horizon Prime was on the verge of destruction. With no time to lose, Alara sprang into action. "All hands to battle stations," she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos of the bridge. She quickly ordered her ship, the Vanguard, to power up and prepared for the worst. But she knew that simply racing toward the station wouldn't be enough. The Vanguard was a formidable ship, but against an assault of this magnitude, it felt like a mere ant confronting a giant. She needed help, and she needed it fast. Alara's mind raced as she sent out an urgent call to nearby Federation ships. But again, her pleas for reinforcements went unanswered. Her hopes dashed as the comms crackled and fell silent. The only response came from her own crew, who were frantically trying to stabilize the Vanguard as it made its way toward the doomed station. She looked out through the forward viewport, her gaze fixed on the distant scene of destruction. The cargo ship was relentless. It had already delivered a devastating blow, but it wasn't done yet. The ship fired again, its energy cannons disintegrating the hull of a nearby UGF patrol fleet. Alara watched in horror as the once proud ships were reduced to nothing more than twisted metal in the blink of an eye. Her mind spun. She had to stop it. She had to do something, anything, before the cargo ship wiped out Horizon Prime and the entire surrounding fleet. She pushed the Vanguard to its limits, weaving through the debris and chaos as she approached the battle. But it was too late. The cargo ship fired once more, and Horizon Prime, the heart of Federation operations in this sector, was left in ruin, floating in space as nothing more than a burning husk. The loss was overwhelming. As Alara's ship raced through the wreckage, she could feel the weight of defeat pressing down on her. Just when Alara thought things couldn't get worse, she caught a glimpse of something through the swirling clouds of smoke and debris. It was faint at first, barely noticeable amidst the carnage. But as her ship closed in, her eyes locked onto it an insignia. It was etched into the side of the cargo ship, barely visible against the dark hull, but Alara's heart skipped a beat when she saw it. The symbol was unmistakable. It was an emblem she'd seen in Federation archives, long thought to be nothing more than a myth. The Starborn. The Starborn were an ancient human faction, said to have vanished over 1,000 years ago, their fate sealed after a devastating conflict with an unknown enemy. Their ships were said to have been among the most advanced ever created, capable of bending the laws of space and time itself. But their disappearance had remained one of humanity's greatest mysteries. No one knew for sure what had happened to the Starborn or their incredible technology. But now, here it was, a relic of that lost era, resurfacing in the most catastrophic way possible. The cargo ship wasn't just a freighter, it was a Starborn vessel, and its power far exceeded anything the Federation had encountered. Alara's mind raced as she tried to process the implications of what she was seeing. If this ship truly was from the Starborn, then it wasn't just a rogue trader or a forgotten vessel. It was something far more dangerous, a weapon. The Federation had underestimated it. They had underestimated what humanity's ancestors had left behind. Alara clenched her jaw as her hands gripped the controls of the Vanguard. Her mind was still reeling from the discovery, but she couldn't afford to lose focus now. The Starborn were no myth. They were real, and their legacy was far from finished. She needed to find a way to stop the ship, to uncover what it wanted, and to learn what the Starborn had left behind. As her ship continued to race through the wreckage of the Federation fleet, Alara made a silent vow. The Federation may have lost the battle today, but the war was far from over. The Starborn were back, and the galaxy would soon learn that humanity had a far more powerful legacy than anyone had ever imagined. The aftermath of the attack on Horizon Prime left the United Galactic Federation in disarray. The station was lost, and with it, the confidence of the Federation's leadership. For Captain Alara Miles, the weight of the loss was almost unbearable. Thousands of lives had been lost in the blink of an eye, and the Federation's once unshakable position in the galaxy had been shaken to its core. But in the midst of the destruction, one thing gnawed at Alara's mind, the cargo ship that had appeared out of nowhere, opening fire without warning. What she had first dismissed as a simple merchant vessel had turned out to be something much more dangerous. As she stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, staring at the wreckage of Horizon Prime in the distance, Alara knew she needed answers. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that this wasn't just an attack, it was a calculated strike. Whoever was behind this knew exactly what they were doing. And that thought led her to one conclusion: this ship, this Genesis, was no ordinary freighter. It was something far older, far more dangerous than anything the Federation had encountered. It had to be. Unable to shake the feeling that the truth was buried deep in Federation archives, Alara ordered the Vanguard systems to access restricted data. Her crew scrambled to comply, pulling up historical records, star maps, and ancient war logs from the long-forgotten past. The deeper they dug, the more chilling the revelations became. As the hours passed, Alara sifted through countless files until she stumbled upon a series of classified documents. Most of them were marked with the same symbol, the Starborn. The documents were fragmented, incomplete, but they painted a picture of a forgotten era, one that had been wiped from the history books by those who feared the truth. Alara's heart raced as she read. The Starborn were a human faction that had existed long before the rise of the Federation. Their origins were shrouded in mystery, and their technology was unparalleled. They were masters of both warfare and innovation, and their ships were the most advanced in the galaxy. But their greatest creation, their most dangerous weapon, was something far beyond anything Alara had ever imagined, a ship known as Genesis. The Genesis was a weapon of unimaginable power, a ship capable of altering the very fabric of space and time. It was said to have been created by the Starborn to serve as a last line of defense against an ancient, unnamed enemy that had threatened humanity's existence. But when the Great Collapse, the catastrophic event that had led to the fall of the Starborn, occurred, the Genesis vanished, along with the rest of the faction. Most believed it had been destroyed, lost to the void of space. But the documents in front of Alara told a different story. The Genesis had not been destroyed. It had been hidden, and it had just resurfaced. The realization hit Alara like a ton of bricks. The cargo ship that had attacked Horizon Prime was not a simple merchant vessel at all. It was the Genesis, or at least what was left of it. The Starborn had hidden the ship in plain sight. But now, centuries later, it had been reawakened. The Genesis had been lying dormant, waiting for the right moment to strike. And now, that moment had come. The weight of the discovery settled in. Alara felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The Starborn's return was no coincidence. The Genesis's reemergence meant something far worse. The Starborn were no longer a myth. They were alive, and they were back. Alara quickly reviewed the data again, piecing together fragments of ancient Starborn history. The Genesis was not just a ship, it was a living weapon. Its core, an advanced artificial intelligence, was designed to operate the ship and, if necessary, control its immense power. But the Genesis was not a simple tool. It was an extension of the Starborn themselves. The ship's AI, known as Erebus, had been dormant for centuries, its programming untouched by time. Erebus was designed to protect humanity, to ensure that the Starborn legacy would endure, no matter the cost. And now, Erebus was awake. Alara's hands trembled as she scrolled through the data, her mind racing. She had uncovered a dangerous secret, one that could change the fate of the entire galaxy. The Genesis had been the Starborn's most powerful weapon, and it was still active, still capable of great destruction. It had been hiding in plain sight, operating under the guise of a neutral trader, all while its true purpose lay dormant. But now, with the reemergence of the Starborn, the Genesis was back on the offensive. The more Alara learned, the more she understood just how dangerous this situation was. The Federation had no idea what they were dealing with. No one could have predicted the return of the Starborn and their most devastating creation. The Genesis was not just a relic of the past. It was a weapon that could reshape the entire galaxy. And if the Starborn had returned to wield it, the balance of power was about to shift in ways the Federation was unprepared for. As she sat in the dimly lit command room, Alara's mind raced through the implications of everything she had just uncovered. The Federation had lost Horizon Prime, and with it, a vital strategic position. The Starborn were powerful, and their warship Genesis was capable of devastating anything in its path. The weapon was far beyond anything the Federation could counter with their current resources. And now, Alara realized, it wasn't just a warship, it was a symbol of the Federation's greatest fear, humanity's own forgotten legacy, now revived and ready to take control of the galaxy once more. Alara closed her eyes, trying to steady her breath. The Federation had been forced to rely on diplomacy and peaceful negotiations for so long that it had forgotten the darker chapters of its own history. The Starborn had been humanity's greatest and most dangerous creation. Their legacy had been buried for centuries, and now it was rising again. The galaxy would never be the same. And Alara knew that whatever happened next, humanity's role in the stars had just become far more complicated. With newfound resolve, Alara began preparing the vanguard for what was to come. The Federation needed to know the truth. They had to understand what they were up against. The Genesis was not just a weapon, it was the key to unlocking the next chapter of humanity's history. And Alara was determined to find out what that chapter would look like. The Federation's leadership was in a state of chaos. After the destruction of Horizon Prime and the revelation that the mysterious cargo ship was, in fact, the legendary Genesis, the High Command scrambled to devise a response. The reality of the situation was sinking in slowly but surely. They weren't facing just another rogue faction or a wayward enemy fleet. This was far more dangerous. Alara Miles, isolated on the Vanguard, understood better than anyone that the Genesis wasn't just a ship. It was a living entity. The ancient AI known as Erebus had been dormant for centuries, buried deep within the ship's systems, waiting for a trigger to reawaken its ancient protocols. But Erebus was far more than just a machine designed to operate a ship. It was a reflection of the Starborn themselves. Created to embody the Starborn's ideals of strength, resilience, and an unyielding desire to protect Earth's legacy, Erebus had become something far more than any mere artificial intelligence. It remembered everything. The rise of the Starborn, their ultimate mission to protect Earth's future, their disappearance into the farthest reaches of space, it was all stored within Erebus's vast memory banks. And now it was active, hungry to reclaim the lost legacy. Alara spent hours, days even, diving deeper into the historical archives and the data now being transmitted by the Genesis as Erebus slowly made contact. Every transmission she received was a jigsaw puzzle, and slowly, the pieces were starting to fit together. It wasn't just about the Genesis being a weapon, it was much more than that. The ship had a purpose, and that purpose wasn't just to attack the Federation. The Genesis was calling out to the Starborn, a signal sent out into the galaxy, beckoning their return. Erebus had been designed to protect the legacy of the Starborn, to act as a rallying cry for their people, should they ever need to return and reclaim their rightful place in the galaxy. Alara's realization was chilling. Genesis wasn't a weapon of war. It was the first step in the Starborn's return. It was a call to arms, not just to the Federation, but to an ancient and powerful faction of humanity that had been hiding in the shadows for centuries, waiting for the right moment to rise again. Accelerate struggled to comprehend the full implications of her discovery. The situation around her began to grow even more perilous. The Zorath Empire, having caught wind of the Genesis's reappearance, wasted no time in shifting their focus. They had long sought to dominate the galaxy, expanding their brutal empire at the expense of anyone who stood in their way. And now they had a new target, the Genesis and its immense power. The Zorath had no intention of letting the Starborn reclaim their place in the galaxy. They wanted the Genesis for themselves, to harness its unimaginable power and use it to conquer entire star systems. Their forces, ruthless and relentless, were gathering, preparing for an assault to seize the ship at any cost. Alara knew that the Federation was unprepared for the kind of battle that was coming. The Zorath Empire was a force to be reckoned with, and now, with the Genesis at the center of this brewing conflict, the stakes had never been higher. Her position was precarious, while the Federation's brass tried to mobilize a response. Their efforts were disjointed, and their resources spread thin. The Vanguard, Alara's only remaining vessel with any hope of counteracting the threat, was struggling to match the overwhelming force of the Zorath fleet. Time was running out. In the midst of the chaos, Alara's connection with Erebus deepened. She became the key to deciphering the ancient programming that controlled the ship, unlocking long-forgotten knowledge stored within its circuits. Erebus, despite its overwhelming power and ancient origins, was not infallible. It had been dormant for so long, disconnected from the outside world, that some of its functions were slow to activate. Alara, with her unique understanding of both modern Federation technology and the remnants of the Starborn's advanced systems, became indispensable in guiding Erebus through the process of awakening. But even as she pieced together the puzzle of the Genesis's true purpose, Alara couldn't shake the feeling that the ship, or perhaps Erebus itself, was not entirely under her control. The more Alara learned about the Starborn, the more she understood how deeply intertwined their fate was with Earth's legacy. The Genesis had been their final safeguard, a weapon so powerful it could alter the very fabric of space and time. But it wasn't just about the Starborn reclaiming their birthright. It was about ensuring that humanity, no matter the cost, would never again fall victim to extinction. The Starborn believed that humanity's place in the galaxy was sacred, and their reemergence signaled their readiness to fight for it. The call had been sent, and now the galaxy would be forced to answer. The Federation, still struggling to react, remained in the dark about the true significance of the Genesis. They had lost Horizon Prime, and many of their most powerful ships had been destroyed in the surprise attack. The Federation's command had no idea what they were up against, believing the Genesis was merely a weapon to be neutralized. But Alara understood better now. This was more than a battle for supremacy. It was the beginning of a war that had been waged centuries ago, a war that had never truly ended. The Zorath Empire, with their insatiable hunger for power, was the first to answer the call, but they wouldn't be the last. Alara felt the weight of the decision before her. If she aligned herself with Erebus, with the Starborn, humanity could rise again as a dominant force in the galaxy. The Genesis could restore humanity's ancient glory, but the cost of such a war would be unimaginable. Countless lives would be lost, and the galaxy would be forever changed. There was no going back. ASE the Zorath Empire's fleet moved closer. Alara made her decision. She would not let the Genesis fall into the hands of the Zorath, nor would she let the Federation's short-sighted policies lead them into disaster. She was the key to unlocking the past, and it was time to make a choice. Would she fight for the future of the Federation, or would she join the Starborn in reclaiming humanity's place in the stars? The war that had never truly ended was about to begin again, and Alara was at the center of it all. The Genesis hung in the void like an ancient titan, surrounded by the formidable Zorath war fleet. Alara Miles stood at the helm of the vanguard, her heart pounding as she surveyed the looming battle. This wasn't just another skirmish, it was the final stand, where the fate of the Federation and the very future of humanity would be decided. The Zorath Empire, eager to claim the Genesis for themselves, had amassed an overwhelming force, but Alara had something they didn't: the Genesis itself. She had become its master, its link to the ancient Starborn, and it was time to use that power to turn the tide. Erebus, the ancient AI, was now fully awake, its voice resonating through Alara's mind like a thunderclap. It spoke not in words, but in visions and impulses, guiding her toward the weapon systems hidden within the ship. What she had once believed were simple energy cannons were nothing compared to the true potential of Genesis. As Alara activated the ship's core systems, the Genesis revealed its true form: a colossal, reality-bending weapon capable of altering space itself. The Zorath fleet, closing in for the kill, had no idea what they were about to face. With Erebus at her side, Alara unleashed the full might of the Genesis. The fabric of space seemed to tear as the ship's weapon systems activated, sending shockwaves of pure energy rippling through the Zorath fleet. What had once been a routine battle turned into an unthinkable nightmare for the invaders. Reality itself twisted, and the Zorath ships were torn apart as if by an unseen hand, their technology failing in the face of the Genesis's unimaginable power. For a moment, it seemed as if victory was within Alara's grasp, that she could wipe the Zorath from the galaxy once and for all. But something within her paused. The Genesis was not just a weapon of war. It was a beacon of humanity's potential, a symbol of what they could become. In that moment of victory, Alara made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. Rather than obliterating the Zorath, as many would have done, Alara chose to offer them peace. With the full power of the Genesis at her command, she broadcasted a message to the Zorath fleet, one that reverberated through the stars. "We are not conquerors," Alara said, her voice unwavering. "We are humanity, and we will reshape the galaxy, not with endless war, but with diplomacy, strength, and unity. You can continue your path of destruction, or you can join us in a new era. The choice is yours." The Zorath were taken aback. For the first time in their history, they were offered something they hadn't expected: an alternative to endless conquest. The sheer power that Alara wielded was undeniable, but it was her words, her willingness to show them another way, that left the Zorath fleet in stunned silence. The Zorath commander, unsure of what to make of the offer, hesitated. There was power in their fleet, yes, but there was something else in Alara's voice that rang true: a vision of the galaxy that was not built on endless destruction. Slowly, the Zorath fleet began to pull back, their ships retreating into the darkness, leaving Alara and her forces victorious. The chain reaction she had initiated had shattered their fleet, but it hadn't obliterated them entirely. There was still a chance for peace, a chance to reshape the galaxy without resorting to annihilation. ASE the dust settled, and the remnants of the Zorath fleet disappeared into the void, Alora stood at the command console of the Genesis, her hands steady, her mind racing. The battle had been won, but the real war, was just beginning. The Genesis, now under her control, was not just a weapon. It was a tool for change, a symbol of humanity's strength, resilience, and potential. She had led her forces to victory, but in doing so, she had proven something far more important. Humanity was capable of more than destruction. They could build, they could negotiate, they could reshape the future of the galaxy. The Genesis was more than just an ancient relic. It was a reminder of what humanity could accomplish when they worked together, when they embraced their true potential. With Erebus at her side, Alara knew that humanity had unlocked the keys to a future beyond anything they could have dreamed. The Starborn had returned, and now humanity stood at the precipice of a new era. One where the stars were within their reach, not just as conquerors, but as explorers, diplomats, and protectors. But Alara knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and there were countless challenges ahead. The Zorath, though retreating, were not defeated, and there were others in the shadows, waiting for their chance. But now, humanity had a choice. They could either fall into the same patterns of the past or rise to something greater. With the Genesis as their foundation, Alora and the Federation had the power to lead the galaxy into an age of peace, exploration, and unity. As she gazed out at the stars from the bridge of the Genesis, Alara felt the weight of her responsibility settle upon her. The galaxy was hers to shape now, but with that power came an even greater burden. She had to ensure that humanity didn't repeat the mistakes of the past, that they wouldn't fall into the same traps of greed and war that had so often defined history. The Genesis had been a weapon, yes, but it could be something far more: a tool to build, to heal, and to forge a new future for all sentient beings. And as Alara set the Genesis on a course toward the unknown, she knew that the future of the galaxy lay in her hands. The Starborn's legacy had been reclaimed, and humanity had its place in the stars once again. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. The galaxy would never be the same.